Yeah, appreciate being invited. I'm from Sequatchie Cove Creamery, which is located in Sequatchie, Tennessee, outside of Jasper. We're about 35 minutes from Chattanooga. Because I live out there, I work out there, my whole world is out there. I didn't know about Startup Week. I didn't know about 1 Million Cups until I got invited to do this. And so it's kind of cool. I just get to plug in a little bit into Chattanooga. This is my hometown, so I'm here pretty regularly, and especially on Wednesdays because the Main Street Farmers Market is right down the street. That's where my one farmers market outlet that we sell our cheese at. So anyway, Sequatchie Cove Creamery is a farmstead artisan cheese producer, and we're located on Sequatchie Cove Farm, which is the source of the cow's milk that we use for the cheeses. And so farmstead, that word is sort of like a key word to describe our product, which is defined in the cheese world as cheese that is made on the farm where the milk is produced. And it's a relatively rare thing, and it's definitely sort of more of a small scale, artisan, kind of handmade thing. So if you hear of farmstead cheese, you kind of know it's probably made in small batches. The milk is sourced right there off site, and there's a really high attention to quality and production methods and everything. So that's what we founded in 2010. My husband, Nathan Arnold, is the cheesemaker, and I am more or less the marketing team. It's a very small business. It's myself and Nathan, and then we have 2 full-time cheesemakers and 1 part-time cheesemaker. So, and she just started about 2 weeks ago. So we're just really slowly growing our staff and our capacity also for making more cheese. But we are on track this year to produce about 25,000 pounds of cheese for the year. Last year was about 18,000. The year before that was probably about 14,000. So we're just growing it little by little. We keep having this like, oh, we're going to grow it about 100% this year. We're going to double production, and then we maybe get 50%. It doesn't grow as fast as we want it to because being inherently part of a farming operation, an agricultural enterprise, there's so many curveballs that come along that we can't anticipate, and just issues with production, whether it's milk quality or because it's a cheese product, we're dealing with microorganisms, and that is a really tricky thing. And also because we were new not only to the cheese making side of things, but also the dairying part. Sequatchie Cove Farm, we've always been involved with Sequatchie Cove Farm, and we've been producing grass-fed beef and lamb and vegetables and fruits and all kinds of other products, but milk was sort of a new thing for the farm. So we started both of those things at the same time, and I would not recommend that. I think if I knew now, or if I knew then what I know now about this business, we never would have started it. But having said that, we really love what we do. We're very passionate about what we do. We have had some major successes, and so it's been an amazing experience. And so in 2014, Nathan and I took over the business. It was all rolled into the farm for the first 4 years. So this year we sort of broke away and took over Sequatchie Cove Creamery. So now we still exist on the farm. We still work with the same people, and it's the same milk, same animals, but now legally we have an LLC, and it's our own thing. We call it Legendary Cheese Works, and then we're doing business as Sequatchie Cove Creamery, so that's our trade name. So all of this is very new. I mean, we've been doing this and making and selling cheese for almost 5 years, but being a business owner is like a major foreign territory for me. So when I heard about this opportunity to present and talk to you guys, I was really excited about feedback and maybe giving perspective or advice from the audience. I've also got samples of the product, so I want everybody to try it this morning, and feedback and perspective about the product as well would be great. But I'm really hopeful that there's some people in the audience today that have been running a small business, and maybe know some, have some perspective about marketing or how to grow in a smart way. My role as marketing, I'm also sort of the office manager. I do the payroll. Just sort of sales and office manager. It's all rolled into one, but I don't know that much about any of that. So my background is horticulture, and so anyway, this is a new world for me, and I'm excited to get feedback from folks who've been doing more business-oriented things, or have a little bit more experience and time involved in something similar, or maybe not similar in terms of the product, but similar in terms of the kind of scope and size. So as far as where we market our products, of course, we have a big local customer base here in Chattanooga, but now we're getting out to more of a national market. Thanks to the American Cheese Society, we've won a few awards, national awards, for this cheese right here. This is Dancing Fern. And so that's gotten our name out there in a much bigger market. And people don't really know the name Sequatchie Cove Creamery, they know Dancing Fern. So, it's not a bad thing, but trying to maybe create awareness, or not necessarily create the awareness, but keep the momentum going, and keep our name out there in people's minds when we're so far away from them. That's sort of another challenge that we face. And then distribution, how to get the product from where we are, which is in a remote location. We don't have access to a whole lot of refrigerated trucks or other kind of freight. I use FedEx a lot just to get my orders to the customer, and that's very expensive. So there's just a whole lot of challenges, I guess, just with distribution and also just constantly accessing new customers and just growing the interest in our products on a national level, or even just a regional level, because Nashville, Atlanta, Birmingham, Florida, the state of Florida, we haven't really tapped into. There's a lot of just southeastern potential that we really need to grow. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and where we are in the phase of growth of Sequatchie Cove Creamery. I will say that all the cheeses that we make are raw cow's milk. They're unpasteurized milk, so that's another, I guess, sort of a niche market that we're looking at. And it is growing a lot. I think the demand for these kinds of cheeses has grown. It's grown a ton around Chattanooga, definitely, but I think that's a reflection of the whole national market, the whole national mentality of the customers, and what people are looking for, just what people are aware of out there in terms of food and what quality food means, and the kinds of products that weren't accessible before that are out there now. And cheese is definitely, I think, one of those products where there's a ton of good cheese out there, and it's a very competitive market. So if you're small like we are, it's hard to compete because our prices are higher, our production is more limited. Trying to consistently supply our customers with products is challenging. Like I said before, being part of a farm enterprise, we just experience a lot of unexpected blips in our production. We may not be making Dancing Fern as long this season because we've had issues with one of the cultures that we're using, or the milk at this time of year starts to be a little different because the cows are eating something different, and that plays, why it's actually a very significant factor in how the cheese turns out. So we make certain cheeses at certain times of the year because the milk is more suited for that particular cheese, like the blue cheese we're making right now. We're making a ton of blue cheese. And also because we introduced that cheese this year, and it just took off, and everybody has really liked it, and we've had a huge response. So now we're really ramping up production so that we can have a lot for the holidays and through the winter. But, you know, we're sort of just like always flying by the seat of our pants and like, you know, trying to figure it out as we go along. We're on a shoestring budget and, you know, all those kinds of things. So, so that's where I'm at. And if you guys have any questions or comments, just throw them up here.
When did you, like what month this year did you take up the business?
March.
Okay, and what's been the hardest part of it so far?
The hardest part, well, it's a good question. I mean, pretty much everything, but I mean, the biggest challenge that we have right now that we're facing is renovating our aging room and just trying to come up with a way to fit that into our budget and just keep everything going at the same time. So we are borrowing some money, which we didn't have access to before we took over the business. But just trying to figure out how to manage our budget.
Yeah.
And everything that has to do with money is the hardest part. We're farmers. That's really, you know, money is just, it's kind of a foreign concept for us. But
I think that's pretty common in people who are really passionate about what they do and they get into doing business about that, and you realize you're spending 80% of your time business admin and not getting to work with your passion, which is the farming.
Right.
You know?
Right. So it's really falling into my lap because my husband Nathan is the cheesemaker and he doesn't really deviate. He lets me worry about the money stuff. And that's fine. I mean, I knew that's what I was getting myself into, but so it is good that we still have that, you know, fully dedicated brain on the product. And he's sort of an artist, you know, definitely not a business person. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm interested in how you've grown your markets. Could you talk a little bit about like where you started selling and where you're selling now and what's worked and what hasn't?
Well, we started selling right here on Main Street. This neighborhood is where we started, which is the Main Street Farmers Market. And then the restaurants, you know, in this part of town definitely have been very supportive. So Chattanooga was our market. And, you know, I think we were very naive in thinking that we could base this kind of a business solely on such a small, you know, city. I mean, we've had a huge amount of support. It's been great. But in order for this kind of business to work, we have to sell, you know, or basically when the numbers start working, we need to be like the 50 to 60,000 pounds of cheese a year kind of level. So, you know, that's clearly much more like a whole national kind of market. And it's not, you know, every grocery store in the country, of course. It's like specialty shops, cheese shops, restaurants, but, you know, spread all throughout, you know, major cities around the country. So, and that's what we've done, and we've been able to do that because the American Cheese Society, which is a North American trade organization, has such an influence over, you know, the cheese buying market in the United States and also Canada and Mexico. So we got our name out there because we won some awards, and then because of that, all these people from all over the country have called us up and want our cheese. And so then all of a sudden we, you know, this dancing fern, this one cheese that we were just making this little bit of, you know, little small quantity of, we were really paying attention to quality, making it perfect every time. All of a sudden we needed to grow the production of that like tenfold. And that's great. But then trying to create that product and keep it like as perfect and like spot on when it's 10 times as much as we were making, all of a sudden that introduced so many new issues with production that, you know, we had to like go back and figure out, well, how do we make that much more of this cheese? You know, we knew how to do it on a small scale, but now how do we do it on this bigger scale? But so, you know, so it's kind of been like big growth spurt and then shrink back down and like take a step back, reevaluate, then have another growth spurt, you know, so it's been sort of up and down, up and down. But because of the American Cheese Society Award and then, you know, how we have been able to consistently provide a certain amount of product to a certain number of customers, and we have some distributors in on the West Coast, in San Francisco particularly, that's been huge. New York City, Washington, D.C., New Orleans, you know, and just those like key little focal points has helped, you know, I think the awareness grow overall, and then of course Atlanta and Nashville, Birmingham. But But then we've had some great press, like Garden Gun magazine has written an article about us and did some fantastic photography on our cheeses. And it was like this big spread. It was about a year and a half ago, I guess, a little less than a year and a half ago. That was the Garden Gun. And so then we had all these phone calls from all these people all over the country. Just little things like that has basically, given us new doors have opened all over the place for us. But it's almost been too much too fast, and we haven't been able to necessarily provide the product. Then you have to remind people that, oh yeah, we're still here. Now we have that product that you wanted a year ago. Remember me? And so then we kind of have to start over from scratch with some of the customers. But that's kind of how we've grown. And we've just had some really fortunate circumstances, with people really actually wanting to write stories about us, and they care about what we're doing. And it's not just us, it's the whole cheese making, sort of artisan cheese in the Southeast is a very novel idea. And because there's a lot of producers, and I mean a lot meaning like maybe a dozen, not very many, but it's a whole lot more than there was 5 years ago. So that has just gained some attention. The New York Times has written about stuff like, it's just out there. And so we have been riding that wave of interest. Yes?
So the startup that I'm doing, and that probably a lot of other people in the room are doing, are digital. So we provide a digital product, and it's a web application or something like that, or the internet. But there's still parallels. Like you have a physical product, but like you started at Sequatchie Cove Farm, so that was your business incubator, so to speak, like company lab, pretty much. And then you're talking about scaling, basically. So I was having a conversation with one of our contractors yesterday about how we scale things, and the answer is right now that we have to rely on third-party services, like people that provide platform as a service, like Rackspace is our server hosting. GitHub is our code where we keep all our code. So I don't know if there's a similar thing that you can leverage, because you're talking about scaling your business. Like I guess the parallel would be distribution deals,
right?
Where you sign on with a distributor, basically. So do you have like a 5-year plan of who you're gonna reach out to and do that kind of thing with?
And that's exactly what we have been able to secure some distribution. And it's not like a deal where we sign a contract and then we say, okay, we're going to provide you this much cheese over the next 5 years, and it's sort of guaranteed sold, or it doesn't really work that way. We still have to get out there and pound pavement and say, back in the summer I went with Atlanta Foods International, that's AFI or Gourmet Foods International. They're just like a ginormous distributor, but they happen to be based in Atlanta. So, and they sell our products, but they also sell like a gazillion other cheeses. And they have a huge catalog that's like this thick, and all the restaurants and customers that they sell to have one, but we're just this tiny little quarter page in there. And so, we have to still go, I went down there and rode around with one of their sales reps and shook hands and handed out samples to some of their customers, and but to really make an impact, to actually get on the radar, I feel like, with a lot of, and that was just Atlanta. I mean, they're all over the country. I need to spend a week with them and go with a different sales rep every day. And, and a lot of cheese companies do that. And they'll fly somebody from, say, Road Creamery in Oregon will come to AFI and ride around with a sales rep for a week. But we are so small, we just can't afford the time and the human to be there. So we're, just our size is at, puts us at a disadvantage, because we are so easy to sort of overlook in that big, huge marketplace. I mean, even Whole Foods, and they're a great customer. They've been very supportive of us. But their cheese case, I'm sure you guys have probably all noticed, it's like a sea of cheeses, and you go in there as a customer and you're like, I don't even know what I'm looking at. There's too much. You need somebody to kind of hand sell. And so that our cheese is just sort of lost in that abyss. A lot of times, and then it's more expensive than
they usually
so much
have somebody
other
working the
cheese.
counter though that knows about can point people, because you can go in and ask, say, I like blue cheese or something like that, and they're usually pretty helpful.
Right, and yeah, they are. I mean, the salespeople in there are knowledgeable, helpful, and so it's up to us to say, go do demos in Whole Foods. In 2011, I went to like as many Whole Foods as I could, because we were a brand new vendor for them at that time. And I just did demo, you know, I sampled Cumberland and like went to Atlanta, went to Nashville, like all kinds of stores, and got to know the people working there. So then they could say, oh yes, Sequatchie Cove Creamery, they were in here doing a demo, they're great, they're from Sequatchie, Tennessee, and they have like a little piece of the story, because it's really the story of Sequatchie Cove Creamery that ultimately, you know, sells the product. Once the people who are representing us in those other cities know, you know, a little bit about where we've been and where we're going, and, you know, of course they need to like the product too, then they get more enthusiastic about selling it, and then all of a sudden we stand out and there's like, we have some leverage. But physically getting to all those places and meeting all those people and, you know, gaining that traction has been an immense challenge for us. I see a hand back there, yes.
Yeah, hi. So how have you sized your market? Meaning, have you looked at what your competitors are doing, and then have you looked at what you can do differently? Because in most markets,
Yeah.
that's, you know, you hear the phrase disrupt the market, all these different buzzwords. Essentially what it's about is doing something different to set yourself apart.
Right.
And then you get new eyeballs on you, and then they hear about your story.
Right. Well, I guess, I mean, the main thing that we've done differently is just the actual products that we make, nobody else makes. So, I mean, that's, you know, something that we, you know, I guess from the very beginning, we saw an opportunity. My husband was studying cheese making, and he was going to all these conferences. The American Cheese Society has a national conference every year, and so he attended several of those before we started making cheese, and got to know other cheesemakers, saw what was already like sort of in the marketplace and what was doing well, and then listened a lot to the cheesemongers and other cheese buyers that were attending the conferences, and, you know, what's missing? What are the cheeses that are not available? What are not, you know, what are those cheeses that people are looking for that are in high demand but are not made by an American producer? They're strictly only available, you know, as an imported cheese. So that was kind of our, you know, one big sort of, you know, strategy that we had is, what are the cheeses that we can create that, you know, are automatically going to be get its attention? And Dancing Fern happens to be, not only because we won the awards, but the style of cheese that cheese is didn't exist anywhere. Or the, you know, the ones that come into the United States from France, which is where the Reblochon, that's the style cheese that Dancing Fern is. It's outlawed in the United States because it's a raw milk cheese that's not aged 60 days. So you can't get real Reblochon in the United States, but there's like these sort of, you know, pasteurized versions, and everybody thinks they suck. And so we are making something with raw milk, and it's aged 60 days, and we figured out how to do it so it's very close to the actual Reblochon from France. And so that was a big deal, you know. So that kind of thing, we definitely, you know, started out of in the starting gates with, you know, an idea that would set us apart. But then we've tried other things like being certified organic, because, you know, we've always been an organically oriented farm. Sequatchie Cove Farm has always had, you know, certification. The pastures were certified, you know. But in order to get the cheese certified, where you can have that USDA organic logo on the cheese, and we did it for a year, and then we said, you know what, this doesn't make sense. It's costing us so much more money. It's a huge time suck, and nobody's buying more cheese because that logo's on our product. It didn't help us sell cheese,
But
so we dropped it.
From a marketing perspective or from a distribution perspective, have you guys looked at what other
I've been searching, but I haven't really been able to access something where I was like, this is what we needed all along. You know, Atlanta Foods, you know, that company, they're the only distributor that is able to actually come to the creamery, to the back door, you know, pick up in their refrigerated truck and take our product directly, you know, to their warehouse. Otherwise, it all has to go on a FedEx truck. And because we just don't have access to a refrigerated freight line, I can't, there's some of the bigger distributors like in Chicago and New York, they want our product, but they have this like no break in the cold chain kind of policy.
Yeah.
So, they just won't carry it because we can't figure out how to get it to them on a refrigerated truck. So that's just a big gap for us. And I think it's because, where we're located, there's not a whole lot of other people doing what we're doing, which on the one hand is great, because we don't have a whole lot of competition when we're sort of stand out in the marketplace because we're Tennessee cheesemakers and, there's like 3 of us out there. And then, so that's awesome. But then at the same time, we lack resources that like Vermont or Wisconsin, everything's so well established for those guys.
Do you need to save up for a refrigerated truck? Like, is that the biggest thing hindering your marketing to other places?
Well, yeah, but then in order to, recoup the cost of like a truck and then also like driving it to those distances.
Well, you can
I
drive
don't
it
know
to
that we could ever.
Can you drive it to the train yard and they have like refrigerator train cars or?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I looked at trying to get it on an airplane. But there's no airport, and I have to go to Atlanta. And yeah, I mean, it's just, there's really not a good like connecting point where we are to that sort of infrastructure that exists out there. And even though this is like a trucking mecca, Chattanooga, there's like so many freight lines, but I don't know how, I mean, maybe it's out there and we just still haven't met the right guy or, find the right company, but it's, that is really our, that's kind of the biggest sticky.
I worked for U.S. Express for like a year and a half, and a big part of their business is like they'll drive the trucks for Walmart or a couple of Walmarts and something like that, but I don't know if they do deals with like small.
Right, and because we're tiny.
That need a
Everybody
refrigerated truck.
like looks at us like, yeah, you need 1 pallet load? Oh, I think so. Yeah, and maybe maybe we'll never
You're in that
get
gap.
big enough because we're in that in between size, and that's another big hardship because we're not tiny where we can sell everything at a farmer's market and do it all retail and make it work. But then we're not big enough to like load an 18-wheeler, and we never will be. We never want it to be that big. We want to be that size where we can manage it ourselves and really, have a product that's unique and it's not mass produced. So it's just inherently, we're in between. Yes.
If you had sort of unlimited money, what are those things that you would, like you said, a cave?
Yeah, the aging room, that's a big thing. That has to do with production. And we were working with it. We have obviously aging rooms that we're using now to produce the cheeses that we have, but we could really improve the efficiency and like the quality of the cheese ultimately that comes out of those aging rooms if we had some better climate control equipment. So, and we have borrowed some money, so we're going to renovate the first aging room. And then the other thing that I've kind of got on the horizon is, and I'm really scared of this, but Kickstarter to raise the money for the second aging room. And we're kind of gearing up to launch a Kickstarter campaign early next year, probably in March, to maybe raise about $50,000, which would be, that would really do a decent job of helping us renovate that second aging room. So that's another thing that is, we're throwing around, we're tossing around, we're trying to establish, Facebook, Instagram, get social media kind of happening, we need to get our own website. Fortunately, because of Sequatchie Cove Farm and as, that farm's existence, that's, we've been around for so long, we have a pretty decent sized email list that we can access. But, so, has anybody done Kickstarter? Does anybody have any perspective? Right, well, yeah, and we're good friends with Bello, and they have been very generous and willing to provide some insight to their success. Actually, John, who sort of spearheaded their Kickstarter campaign, helped me last year. He worked at the Creamery for a while last year, so we have a good relationship. But I'm really scared of Kickstarter. And, and I have a 9-month-old baby, and just, trying to manage everything. I get intimidated. Yes.
What about instead of focusing on making your one operation a little bigger and more distributing outlets, instead systemizing your process of making the cheese, calling it Sequatchie Cove Creamery, and then selling that to other local farmers and then tapping into their little outlet wherever that may be.
Mhm.
Therefore, it's still a local cheese, it's still
Right.
your cheese, they get a cut of your, it's just a different way of thinking about it. Instead of scaling up the one operation and distributing from there,
Right.
go a totally different direction.
I guess, I don't know. Well, my husband has such a tight grip on the product that, just even hiring a new cheesemaker and letting somebody else make the cheese without him being there is that gives him heart palpitations. So trying to actually, put our company into the hands of other cheesemakers, I don't know. I've never heard of anyone doing that, but I like that. Just thinking outside the box for sure. The good thing about the artisan cheese community and that industry is we all are friends and we all are, sort of supportive of each other. And, just because this North Carolina cheesemaker over here might sell to some of the same places that we sell to, we all want each other to be successful and we can all sort of, support each other in different ways. But I don't, that's a great thought.
Yeah, if your husband really knows the system as well as
Yeah.
he does, he could write it down on paper, give it
Right.
to somebody else, train them, make sure they know
Yeah.
how to do it.
If it wasn't an agricultural enterprise and there weren't all those sort of variables, the milk, and the animals, and every farm's different. And then the other thing about artisan cheese that I didn't really say, but one of our objectives with starting Sequatchie Cove Creamery was we wanted to make something that you can only find from the Sequatchie Valley. This cheese only exists in Coppinger Cove because it comes from these cows that eat this grass from this land. It's sort of like wine in that way. It has that, kind of romantic association with the place and, the region and the seasonality, and that also sort of, definitely is part of our marketing angle. So,
We got time for one more question. We gotta eat some cheese.
yeah, you guys should try some cheese. It might be a little early in the day for cheese, but maybe coffee and cheese.
Have you read Omnivore's Dilemma?
Yes.
And in
I
that,
should reread it.
in that, it talks about specialty and it talks about commodity. And in the middle is death.
Thanks.
So what I would say is,
We're right there.
raise your prices.
Yeah. All right. We have been toying with that, and really because we've been going up in production, we've had to drop our prices just in order to keep selling the cheese fast enough. Because another thing with our facility is we're so small, we can't let cheese pile up anywhere because then, we're making cheese every day. And then there's no more room for the next batch of cheese to go in the cave because we need to move, the oldest stuff out. So price is another major.
You could take a vacation, quit making cheese for a little bit, make it a limited edition.
Yeah.
Because I love Dogfish Head beer, and they
Yeah.
didn't have a distributor in Tennessee for a long time, and then they got distributor deals in a bunch of other states. So they sent this 120-minute IPA all to other states, and I couldn't get it for a while, and it made me want it so much more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we definitely have because over the winter, pretty much everything sells out, and we run out of a lot of the different cheeses that we make, and then in the spring we have this big resurgence of people and interest, and seasonality is definitely a key to keeping everybody interested in that. But also having a different cheese for every season so they don't forget about us, or they don't go too long without some sort of product from Sequatchie Cove Creamery in their case. So it's a delicate balance, but yeah. What did you say? Specialty, commodity, death. Okay.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.